Welcome. On behalf of the Hispanic Leaders Network, I would like to welcome you to today's luncheon. My name is Pedro Zamora. I serve on the Hispanic Leaders Network Cultural and Community Engagement Committee. I also serve as a public information specialist for Jack of All Trades. The Hispanic Leaders Network is a group of passionate leaders who are deeply vested in supporting current and future leaders in the greater Waco community. Our vision is to develop and empower current and future leaders to make a difference in the community. Our mission is to provide personal, cultural, and professional opportunities to inspire Hispanic leaders to serve and make a positive impact. We have a great program for you today on unleashing the power of counseling with an amazing panel who you will meet soon. First of all, I would like to invite Pastor Juan Carrion from his house church in Waco to give the invocation.
Good afternoon, Good afternoon. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's bow our heads, please. Heavenly Father, we come before you in the name of your Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We thank you for today, and we also welcome you here in our presence. Thank you, Lord, for the leaders that you've developed and raised up, Father, to help other leaders come up and do more work for our city, for our county, for our state, and so forth. Lord, we ask that you bless everybody's time here today. Thank you for this meal that we received. We bless the hands that served it, that paid for it. Amen. Right? Amen. That paid for it, that paid for it, Lord, and let it be a blessing for our body. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Carrion. I would like to take this opportunity to also recognize any distinguished guests and any elected officials joining us today. Thank you for your presence. And without great partners and sponsors, the Hispanic Leaders Network could not host such events as the one today. We are very thankful to La Puerta Waco for sponsoring today's luncheon. Thank you. Gracias. Let's show them our appreciation and also welcome La Puerta's Executive Director, Israel Locamin, to say a few words on behalf of La Puerta Waco.
It's really a blessing for La Puerta, and also in representation of this Waco, to have everyone here. And La Puerta is a space, La Puerta is education, La Puerta is advocacy, which is really is everyone that's sitting here. And I want to say it's not all me. I didn't do a lot of work. I just arrived today, but with this big person who did today, what is provided and everything, the hosting. Julia, would like to meet Julia. That's her last name. Before she was Wallace, but now she is Wallace. So you can talk to her. She's our mission sponsor of our church. Our church is really big, so you want to also have a tour when you finish. In this time, please to come. So we have different areas. So don't go to the children development, go to the daycare, because they will kick you out. But go to the next door, which is like we also have stained glasses. So there is a tour. You want to visit also, a little bit more the church. Just go to the side. It's going to be the church office. Keep walking, and then you will go that glass door, which is in the second floor, is La Puerta. So we are on the second floor. You want to stop by at the end. So please visit us and learn more about what is La Puerta. And I want to say it's a really pleasure to have you here.
Israel, talk about the fundraiser.
Oh, thank you. Okay. And also I would like to invite, so La Puerta is pretty new as a nonprofit, and we are trying to better advocate for the Hispanic community here in Waco. And we also would like to expand things as well, in different programs. And that comes, we need you. We need your support. So we have a big event November 16th during lunchtime. We'll be at the Greater Cash, and you are interested, we'll send information, get interested, please contact to Hector or me, or look at our website, we'll have more information about this event. Thank you.
Gracias. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Alondra Castillo, Research Coordinator with Waco Family Medicine, to introduce our special guest moderator for today.
Pretty short. Yes. So today I have the honor of introducing our moderator for today's panel discussion. Dr. Mito Diaz Espinosa is a proud Waco native who currently serves as the Director of Equity Initiatives at Waco Family Medicine. He specializes in areas specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, training, hiring, and staff, and patient experiences. He has worked in various areas of higher education, including admissions, diversity programs, leadership and civic engagement, and Title IX. Mito earned his undergraduate degree in history from Texas A&M University and his master's degree in higher education and student affairs from Baylor University. He earned his PhD in higher education administration from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. He is also a dedicated husband and father. So please join me in welcoming Mito.
Hello, everyone. All right, can everybody hear me? Yes. Great. I was joking with Anthony and some others earlier about, I'm just here to be a moderator, so I'm going to ask some questions, but there's some very important people here who are the subject matter experts. So I'd like to invite them up to our panel, then I'm going to do a short introduction of them, and then we can go ahead and get started. So as they're making their way up, I just kind of want to frame this conversation a little bit. So in thinking about our collective group as a whole in the world, we came off a global pandemic of a few years, which caused a lot of pain and trauma. And specifically to the Latino and Latina community, a lot of us work in frontline jobs, those essential careers. So the pandemic impacted us directly. We weren't able to work from home. We didn't have the ability to get insurance pay and other things, so economically it affected us, but also because we worked in those frontline jobs, a lot of our friends and family were sick or passed away, so that trauma has also been something that has hurt us. We also had littles that stayed home, worked from home, learned from home, and we had to become teachers, as well as parents, as well as run our own jobs, and that's a whole different type of stress and trauma that we endured. So in thinking about all that, plus economically, inflation, and other things that are going on, how do we as a community and as a Latino community, Latina community, deal with that? And how do we process those traumas and that mental health? And we wanted to kind of figure out what does that look like in terms of counseling and therapy. So we thought about bringing some experts in to talk about their experiences and what they do. And graciously and luckily in Waco, we have the resources to have three very astounding professionals that can kind of share their experiences and expertise and talk to us a little bit about what that might be. I'm going to ask some scripted questions. Hopefully at the end we'll have some time for you all if you want to ask questions, but hopefully this can be a little bit more of a conversation as we start to engage with these topics. So I'll start and introduce our panel. To my immediate side is Aranza Torres, who is a Mexican immigrant. She claims Waco as home. She has spent the last 10 years working in the mental health and advocacy field and completed a bilingual master's degree with a specialization in migration and refugee trauma. More recently, Aranza has been serving as a bilingual therapist in the community. She has experience working with all kinds of issues from anxiety and stress, increasing coping skills, boundary building, and more. She also has experience working with individuals learning to live with severe and persistent mental illnesses. She enjoys working with adults of all ages, especially individuals who identify as part of the BIPOC or LGBTQIA+ communities. Her goal is to walk alongside others and encourage them and help build on their resilience. So give a round of applause. Next to her is Dr. Veronica Molina. Dr. Molina is an assistant professor and MSW field director with Tarleton State University at the MCC campus. She's also a clinical director and bilingual therapist here at La Puerta Counseling Center, housed within First Baptist Church of Waco. She did invite folks to come by after and visit her office on the second floor. So please take her up on that if you're interested in doing that. Dr. Molina has 20 years of experience helping children and families struggling with complex traumas. She's passionate about helping others manage their stress level and mental health. Her current therapy model focuses on providing adults with low-cost, short-term therapy for as little as $10 a session. So help me give her another round of applause. And then finally, last but not least, a friend, a mentor, a former professor of mine, Dr. Liz Palacios. Liz is originally from San Antonio, but pretty much calls Waco home now. About a year ago, she retired from Baylor University after 40 years of service in various roles, many of which she was the first Latina to hold those positions. Some of those include Dean of Student Development, Special Assistant to the President, and among many things, Liz is an LPC, a licensed professional counselor, and has returned to working directly with individuals as she continues to serve on numerous boards and organizations throughout town, throughout the state, and across the country. So thank you, Liz. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is a pretty broad topic in thinking about counseling and therapy. There's a lot of terms that get used, from mental health to behavioral health, counseling or therapy, LPCs, licensed professional counselors, or LCSWs, licensed clinical social workers, psychiatrists, psychologists, just a lot of different things. So each of you all, can you please educate us a bit on what some of those differences are, how they impact someone seeking help, and essentially how do we go about figuring out who we should see and under what circumstances? And along with that, talk a little bit more about your specializations and your licenses and kind of what you do in your practice.
Hello. That's a long answer. It's going to be a long answer, but what I would start with by saying is that all of those are licensed professionals, and so you would be receiving care from a licensed professional. Some of those are very specific, so a LCDC, licensed clinical dependency counselor, those are specific to substance abuse counseling, and then the marriage and family therapist, that is specific to someone who is interested in marriage and family therapy, right, relationships and things like that. The other ones, the LPC, the LCSW, trying to remember, there's a lot of them, but those mental health professionals are also licensed. And I would probably start first with a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist can diagnose and they can prescribe medication. And then from there, the rest of the counselors can in some way diagnose, but they may not be able to prescribe medication. So with the psychiatrist, it's like a one-stop shop when you have a severe mental health issue. And the counselor, so the LPC, the LCSW, and I'm sure I'm leaving out some other important licensed professionals there, they get to pick and choose what they want to focus on. So they can choose to work with adults, children, adolescents, the elderly. It just depends on their interests. So that would mean that's their specialization. So in my case, I've worked with children and families all my life, and so one could say that child welfare, children and families is my specialization, but now I've transitioned to just working with adults. And I may transition into working with the elderly later. It's just kind of ebbs and flows, but it just depends. And then I would say probably the major differences is that each of those take a different pathway to becoming a counselor. So, and then there's a different approach. So if you go to, and I'll speak just with social work. I'm a social worker at heart. And so my approach would be to look at your issues holistically. So we're gonna look at the problem, we're gonna look at the past, the present, the future, and then everything else that's going on in your life to figure out what else is contributing to the problem, or what else is the root of the problem, so that we don't just get rid of it now, we get rid of it forever, if we can. Sometimes in therapy, it's not about actually getting rid of the problem, and I tell my clients this all the time, it's about how we look at the problem. Let's shift the way we look at the problem so that in some ways you're still living with the problem, but you can manage your life with the problem.
And I guess I'll pick up with the LPC, and I'm also a school psychologist. So my doctorate's in school psychology, and that is basically only at schools. So I couldn't hang up a shingle if I was just a school psychologist. But you get to work with the children that are having troubles in the classrooms, and I'll get to work with teachers that need to learn how to work with our children of differences. And so it was very rewarding the time that I did get to work with the different schools. A lot of times that's where your first time that the child will be demonstrating something, or if there's something going on with the family, that's the first time you hear about it. So that was very important, but very rewarding as well. The LPC is exactly as said, we can hang up our shingle and invite, have any type of client. My specialty at first was working with sexually abused children. A lot of them were children from migrants that had been left behind in Mexico or other countries and had been abused while their parents were over here. And so when they came over, then I worked with the sexual assault center, and so those were the children that I would try to help transition, and also work with them in their own, and work with the parents as they're reuniting with their children. So now, as I'm in a new chapter of my life, I always have preferred children, and a lot of my work is with also children in detention centers. Juvenile delinquencies was actually one of my focus, and so working with children that are in the system. We have a lot of learning disabilities, and we found out that with children that are in the system, it's not because our kids are bad, it's a lot of times our kids are not perceiving the world as it is. So that was something else that I was very engaged in. But I'm working with now adults, and as we were talking about COVID, it's online, so this is something very new to me. A lot of folks are still dealing with grief that we're talking about, and so somehow I pushed the wrong button in my platform that I'm working with, and so I said yes. I thought I was going to work with people in Texas and the States. I'm also working with actually I pushed the wrong button, so it's international. I'm working with people from Turkey and Japan and Canada, so you know what, they're all the same. We are all dealing with the same problems. But that's what I'm doing now. It's been a transition for me as well.
Dr. Molina gave a wonderful response, and it was pretty brief, not too long-winded. But I'm also a social worker. I'm a social worker at heart. And social workers take a more holistic perspective. In my experience, LPCs tend to be a little more clinical, but I think both have their benefits. And I think at the end of the day, finding a therapist, whether it's LPC or an LCSW, that works for you, that's really what should be the most important. So as Mito mentioned, my master's program specialized in migrant and refugee trauma, which is what I really enjoy working with. I really enjoy working with Spanish-speaking individuals, especially first-time therapy Spanish-speaking individuals. And I've also been kind of learning more and expanding my practice as far as working with individuals that are part of the LGBTQIA community.
And then very briefly, do you all work in private practice? Are you affiliated with an organization? Kind of talk a little bit about what that looks like.
I was, until recently, employed with MHMR. It used to be MHMR. It's now the Heart of Texas Behavioral Health Network.
And for my clinical services, I created the La Puerta Counseling Center. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity that Israel and La Puerta and the church has given me. And so I came here to do the counseling, and so my office is upstairs, and that's where I do the clinical counseling. So I have a full-time job, but I'll do some hours every week. So it's not a full-time counseling position. So I wouldn't call it private practice, but I would say community practice.
And I am just kind of getting back into the world of counseling, so I wanted to try it online, and it is I still don't know how I feel about it, but the people are wonderful, the clients are wonderful. So right now it's online with a platform, and I'm looking into going into practice with some co-workers of mine.
Thank you. When thinking about the Latino, Latina, Latinx, and Hispanic communities, in your experience working with people from this community, what are some of the common mental health challenges our community faces? And what are some of the things you've experienced in your careers?
Well, I always go back to complex trauma with our community. You know, there's a beginning, and it usually starts with a journey. And whether you traveled within the state, whether you're second generation, first generation, there's a journey there, and behind that, most of the time there's a lot of complex trauma. And if you are first generation, more than likely your parents went through a significant amount of trauma to either travel or make decisions, hard decisions, and then from there, just culturally, we tend to keep things together and not leave. It doesn't leave the house sometimes, or it goes under the rug sometimes, and so unfortunately, that's why it becomes so complex, because it just kind of piles up, and it not just in our community. I think this happens, everywhere. It can affect anybody. And so that's one of the things that
I would say, Dr. Palacios referred to it, all people, we all have the same problems, and so I think that's true. But within the Latinx community, we hold a lot of shame and guilt, and so that adds another layer to the trauma that we experience and the way that we persevere. Sometimes the perseverance itself traumatizes us. And then I would also say I see a lot of machismo and marianismo involved in some of the work that I've had with my clients as well. It's really interesting. And sometimes, my client won't be able to identify that that's what it is, but as we work through it, we kind of learn where some of those things come from.
And I guess with the folks that I've worked with in the past, it's a lot of depression and anxiety. I've been in the college arena for a long time as well, and it's affecting our kids. But I see also that our folks that are coming from different countries are immigrants as well. There's a lot of loss, there's a lot of grief, because they've left behind those things that they know and love, and in a new country. So they're trying to find themselves as well. And what we're saying is we don't call it, we don't say it. A lot of times, what we'll do is we'll feel it. It's like physical ailments. We'll be sick, and so we'll go to the doctor first, even though a lot of it's emotional and psychological, back to trauma.
That's so true.
And a lot of that too, when we're talking to our doctors, we again try to keep that in-house and don't talk about the actual issues, and that just, it's harder for a doctor to prescribe and understand what's going on if we're not sharing, and if we're not comfortable sharing, then sometimes it just manifests and continues to grow. So depending on the data sources and statistics you can search, members of the Latino, Latinx community do not utilize counseling or therapy services at the same rate as white counterparts. In your experiences, what are some of the reasons or obstacles you found that prevent us from engaging in counseling or therapy? And what do you think some ways that we can overcome those obstacles and barriers?
I think right away that our community tends to go to our pastors, our priests, and a lot of times they're very caring and they have exactly what they need for our spiritual growth. But when it's come to pastoring, they don't have really the I guess the context of background or the training. So that's where I wish we could have more of that. And plus we don't. That's a stigma, and we're very proud people. And so when you have a stigma, you don't want to talk about that. And so we'll go to our comadres, or we'll go to our tias or our madre. And so everybody has a different recommendation they should do or say, but they don't say go to a counselor. So, yeah.
Well, I think historically our community associates mental health with being crazy. And so if you go to a therapist, if you go to a counselor, it's because you're a crazy person. And that's just not true. I think everyone and anyone benefits from therapy. And so we have to address that stigma. And I think also we're very proud people, so we carry a lot of shame. And so that shame kind of interferes with our capacity to access those things. And so we have our work cut out for us.
I think the last thing that I would add is the language barrier that creates such a significant gap. Because what happens is that typically individuals that speak primarily Spanish will go see a doctor, or they'll go, to an agency where it's primarily English, and they'll have a horrible experience. And although there are probably opportunities out in the community where other agencies offer bilingual services, because of that one experience, it affects them from there, from seeking other services, or they're afraid. Even if they say they're bilingual, they're afraid to call. And so I know my office is really close to our administrator's desk, and so I can hear when people are talking with her, and when they hear that she speaks Spanish, it's almost like a relief in their voice, and so they're more inclined to speak more and to ask questions. While obviously when you don't have a translator, someone that's bilingual, it just creates a whole other barrier that prevents them from seeking services.
Real quickly, there's also some research and a new study that they're putting in mental health practitioners, mostly psychologists, into the health clinics, a lot in the border as well, because a lot of people don't even go to the doctor. And so for those exact reasons. So they have a person who is bilingual, and they're psychologists, and so they are able to work with the doctors and to identify those things that are more emotional or psychological, which is really it's a great model if they can use the model correctly, because there's a lot of still hierarchy, I guess, between the doctor and the psychologist. So, but for the most part, I think it'll be a great model if we can start putting more of our psychology and mental health workers into the medical field.
And we had this conversation earlier or weeks ago about insurance and paying for it. And a lot of times that becomes a barrier, and we don't think we can afford it, but we don't know what our insurance pays for. But now you have to call somebody and admit that you have a mental health problem, but you don't want to tell a stranger, but you don't know how to connect. So that's another barrier I think a lot of us face, is we don't understand our insurance fully and what's available. We don't know the cost, and we don't know how to make those payments. A lot of organizations and places we work also have EAP programs, or employee assistance programs. And depending on where you work, I would encourage you to research that. When I was at Baylor, we had 5 free sessions essentially on a different topic. So we could talk about depression, we could talk about family trauma, and have 5 on each one of those. And now with family medicine, we have 3 issues, 3 sessions that we can do per issue. So ask those questions. I saw an announcement earlier today that the city of Waco partnered with a company called Armor Up, where they're going to be providing 24-hour access for their staff and employees. So that's something else. All that to say is look at those benefits, talk to your employers, talk to others, your family members, ask those questions. And as Aranza said, even if you feel healthy and you feel good, you feel like, I don't know if I need therapy or counseling, that's an excellent time to start. If you already get 5 free sessions, experiment with it. Doesn't mean you're committing to doing something long-term, but you might be able to unearth some things and be even better, or be prepared when there is a trauma or an emergency comes down the line. You have that experience of going through that session and the process, instead of when you're at your worst and you're at your lowest, trying to figure it out is kind of harder. So I would encourage everyone to look at that paperwork that they give you when you go through your training, and read and ask questions. And the people that you call are all confidential sources. So explore and talk about that, and encourage others in our families and communities to do that as well. Aranza, you briefly mentioned, kind of touched on this, but as evidenced by this panel and the continuation of kind of the previous questions, and when it comes to Latinos versus Latinas versus those that identify as non-binary, what are some of the different things that we have? When I was trying to put this panel together, I called, and Dr. Molina helped me search, and there's no Latino, no male men therapists in Waco. So what are some of those differences between kind of men and women as we approach therapy and counseling, and what, in your experiences, have you seen those differences to be like?
I mean, we definitely have a gendered experience, and when you add the Latinx cultures on top of that, we have to talk about machismo and marianismo and the long-term historical impact and the way that it kind of ties into the trauma that we have as a community, and then as individuals also. And so that invariably will always come up in my sessions with Latinx clients. Whether that client identifies it or not, I can kind of see the trend. I'd say in my experience, I have had sessions with both male identified clients and female identified clients. And women tend to come back, and men will come to one session and will not return, which is okay. That's pretty common. You know, we can do a lot of work even in one session. But I do think it's the lack of the gendered experience, and then I think it also has to do with machismo. In our cultures, if you're a man, you know, you're a man, and you don't go and ask for help. You are the one who handles the household. You do not come off as weak. You don't share any problems. There are no problems, and so that definitely impacts any potential progress in therapy. I'm sure, you know, I don't know for certain, but I'm sure that if there were more male Latinx therapists, we might be able to accomplish more. And so, yeah, we need more male therapists.
I would say that I do see differences. I think with my male clients, therapy tends to be quicker. So it's, and I think the differences here is that we process things differently. There is a gender difference with processing. And so that's, you know, so I just give them that time to process what they want. And if they want to end the session early, they can do that. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is that for women, we will tend to be emotionally charged and also, you know, want to process a little bit longer, and just kind of talk all those things out. And so I think with my male clients, you know, the session might be a little shorter and very solution focused, you know, concrete. You know, not everything's black and white, but, you know, they're willing to, by the time you get to therapy, you're willing to listen to other, you know, alternatives. So, you know, I do see that but they're willing, they're able, they feel like something's wrong, they want to change something. By the time they go, you know, they get to me. And I offer short-term therapy. So it is solution-focused therapy. I don't offer long-term therapy. That was something else that I had decided that I wanted for my therapy services, is that let's come in here and let's get to work. What do you want to work on? And I'll help you get there. I'll meet you halfway. And so those are probably the biggest differences. They have come back though.
And I guess in my experience, because I taught this, and so what I would tell my students is basically saying, you're going to have to use the models or the theories that really fits the client, right? And our males do like the action, and what I say is a lot is that I love solution focus. So it's like, give them something to do so they can see a change. It's a psychological gift. You give them something so they can do something and see a change, and then they do come back, just simply because we're tooling them. And you said it very well. We're not going to change the world to be easy. It's made to be hard. But what we do teach the clients is then how to respond. We have control how we respond, and that's the change we're looking for. And so the males are pretty bad shape or desperate by the time they go see a counselor a lot of times. But I describe it as, and this is so sexist, so please forgive me. To me, when I talk to my clients that are very hesitant, it's a psychological spa. You go out there and this is all about you. When does anybody let you just talk about you? And so this is something that's a gift to you. So we're just the ones that are listening and helping and you know, guiding. But the gift is that you got the solution. It's just trying to get you there. But you know, for me, if somebody's doing my nails, it's all about me. When you go to a therapist, to me, I let them know it's all about you, and you get to be who you are authentically, and we get to have a really honest time together. So it's all about change.
I would just like to add, because that's something so important that I've found in therapy, is that validation. Someone to hear you, validate your feelings, and give you that time and space. And we're non-judgmental. So we're, you know, if you're talking to your mom, if you're talking to your sister, your brother, they're gonna give you the side eye, they're gonna give you, they're gonna tell you, no, like, what are you talking about? or they're going to roll their eyes, or they're going to judge you, or they're gonna say something to you that's gonna hurt you even worse. But when you come to therapy, we're listening, and we're trying to help you process that. And we can see your pain. Mental health, you can't see that pain. So counselors are licensed so that we understand what that pain looks like and what it does to you behind closed doors, when nobody can see, when you're in the dark and you're struggling. And so that's our role here, and that's why therapy works.
And just to talk a little bit more kind of from a men's perspective, Dominic Villa, a lot of people here know him, and he's often talking about his experience with counseling and therapy, and he openly talks about it at different events. So I wish more men would share. We typically aren't really allowed to process our emotions. We feel like we're not allowed to. The only time we cry is if we're drunk, if somebody dies, or if your favorite sport team wins the championship. Outside of that, we're not acceptable to be sharing emotion and crying and sharing, and that really bottles up. So we have this idea of our grandfathers or fathers being real stoic and not saying anything or not showing emotion, and a lot of that comes from that bottled up inside. And when we do finally get to the point where we can let it out, we just let it all out. So again, I would encourage people to think about doing it earlier and sooner and a little bit at a time, so you don't have to kind of flood.
And therapy takes courage, so it's not a sign of weakness, it takes courage.
As you all were talking, I was also thinking about if you could share a little bit differences in generations and age and how they approach counseling and therapy and what that looks like. Is it changing? Do you see it changing? What's kind of been that experience for you all?
Yes, definitely generational changes or differences. Folks that are part of younger generations are more open to accessing therapy, are a little more knowledgeable about what therapy is about. So they know a little bit more about what to expect. They tend to be a little more open, maybe come ready with goals prepared, versus folks that are from older generations. Typically, in my experience, they're people who have been recommended to come to therapy, so it's not usually their first choice. It's because they have a problem that needs to be addressed, and they're like, okay, I just need to find someone to help me. It takes a little more time to develop that relationship with that client, to build that trust with that client. But once you do, I would say the relationship is a lot more meaningful, a lot more valuable, a lot deeper, maybe, because they are really pouring into the therapeutic work. And I mean, yeah, there's still some reservations. It probably takes us maybe 6 months to have a serious conversation about something. Then someone in a younger generation, it might take us a couple of weeks, right? Like, we really have to work up to the hard conversations, but it ends up being really worth it.
I would say that my younger clients they like to access telehealth, so we'll use technology, and so video calls will be okay with them. And then my older clients, they like that face-to-face, the traditional face-to-face, and then the younger clients may tend to disclose everything on the first session. And then my older clients will take a little bit longer, so by the maybe second or third session is when, we actually peel back what's going on with the onion. And so they may come in and say, well, I'm coming in because of my children, because of this or because of that, but then when we actually get into the third session, it's really more about them and what they're struggling with.
So I'm going to take a different route. It's the traditional families and the non-traditional families, because there are traditional Latinos that are going to come. They're going to be that traditional roles, or even using their strengths. Because if I'm working with a family traditionally, I'm not just going to see the child. I'm going to see the mom and dad. I'm not only going to see the mom and dad. They will bring their abuelita or their tío or their tía. They'll bring someone that child respects, and they'll come together. And so when we have a family meeting, I'll bring food. Now we don't learn this in Psychology 101, but we'll bring food, we'll share food, and we'll talk about the things that we can do as a family and what are those things. So that's more. You get to share and match that culture so that they trust you, they feel like you understand us, and will work for solutions that are going to fit. But if it's a non-traditional couple or a family, then I don't go there. I go where they are. But it's wonderful to be able to be a culture, and you don't have to be the same. You don't have to be Latino, Latina. You have to understand how to work with other cultures, and that's the beauty of it. So. But that's I love having tamales and having the family and being able to share about what are we all going to do about this. But if they're non-traditional, you do the non-traditional. You just match, you just see where they are.
Thank you. Dr. Mastos, earlier you talked a little bit about the role of the church and pastors. Can you all kind of share your experiences on how mental health intersects with spirituality as we sit here in the church? We know that's a big role in the Latino community. What are some of the pluses and advantages and drawbacks to kind of going through a pastor or someone as a resource for mental health, and what are some of the things that the people you've seen do?
So some of the kids that I saw in the juvenile detention center would come with a lot of problems, but a lot of it would be, to me, was spiritual, and they would be talking about maybe seeing their dead grandmother's ghost, and they're talking to them and telling them to, hey, you need to straighten up, or you need to do this. The others would say, no, I'm hearing voices, and then they're telling me to go and run in the middle of the street and get killed, right? So there are times when they're talking about, I go to church, but I can't go to church anymore because I can't step in there. And so they'll bring in the psychological and the spiritual, and you're kind of trying to distinguish what is psychological and spiritual. But in our Latino, it is very involved. Spirituality and how they feel and how they work and how they see the world is. So you have a pastor who can deal with the spiritual part of this. You have the psychologist or the mental health worker that can deal with the psychology. But you really need to bring in both, because our family, our cultures, they don't divide. And it's everything is. So if I'm being haunted by one of my relatives, because then we need to kind of dissect that. I don't ever say, oh, you're crazy, right? Or there's no such thing. In some countries, if you don't see the ghost of a departed relative, that means that y'all weren't close. So there's so many different beliefs in so many different ways in different cultures. So my dad was a pastor. People would come to him, and so again, if we could do a better job in helping our pastors, supporting them, I love that you're working with La Puerta, because those are the two aspects that come together perfectly among our people. I hope I answered that. So.
Yes. Go ahead. You want to-
I just wanted to add, I never thought that I would be a counselor under, a church. That's where we started with La Puerta. And the beautiful thing about what First Baptist Church did was, they started offering, and forgive me that I don't know the exact history, but they started offering bilingual services. And then from there, La Puerta expanded because there was a need. They saw that there was a large Hispanic community and a lot of individuals who needed assistance, and so that's where the La Puerta grew. And then Dr. Loachman saw another need. There was another need. There's, so they have all these life skill classes, and then the people in the life skill classes are starting to build a community. They're starting to trust the individuals here at La Puerta, the teachers and the classes and so forth. And so now they are starting to share their experiences and their issues. And that's where they identified that there was a need for counseling. And so then they wanted to build the counseling office. And so that's how all of that, came together. It all kind of intersected. And it was really beautiful how that happened, and how the church, took that initiative to start that and to open that door. And then it just so happened that I was right there at the right time for the opportunity. And so, but through the counseling, I wasn't required to use spirituality through, the counseling. So that was, and this is, out of respect to anybody's faith and spirituality, sometimes it can be a bit judgmental, even on that end. And so that was one of the things that when you come into counseling, it's not always used in counseling. It's used when you want to bring it in. And it's only used for as much as you want to use it. So if you want to start with prayer, we'll do that. It's that safe space where you can do that. But usually the counseling is all about you. And so we don't usually focus on spirituality in counseling. It's usually about the problem, and then how do I get out of the problem? And then yes, there's some mention about God and prayer and beliefs in there, but it's not the focus. It's all about the person. So I'm just very thankful for the opportunity and, that it all just came together here. And really, I haven't seen this anywhere else. It hasn't really happened anywhere else, for a church to open its door and to do that. So what I see is a warm handoff. And that's what I don't see a lot, is when an individual comes to the pastor and they're having this issue and it's beyond, it's mental health issues, then it should be the pastor doing a warm handoff to the counselor to help that process look better or be better for them.
Kind of moving forward a little bit, what are some ways that we, the people in this room, people watching on video, all of us, what are some ways that we can advocate for Latinos needing mental health? And how do we get more people in the community to engage in counseling or therapy? What are some techniques and things? And then also, what are some resources, whether they're state or national, that we might be able to share and use for people that need?
For me, just formalize it, talk about it. It is not taboo, because again, it's one of these things where the young people are already, hey, who's your therapist and what are we doing? What are you doing? It's almost just conversation. But I would say normalize it, and if you see someone in trouble, just walk with them and just say, hey, if you want to talk to someone, I know such and such. Sometimes you have to take them by the hand. We did that when I was working at the university. We would take the student and just walk them to the counseling center, because you're not going to send people. If you have that experience, don't give up on the whole field. It's just like, hey, the doctor. Sometimes you like a doctor, sometimes you don't. So go and find someone that you feel like is going to be matched. And I think the last thing is really just be positive, be supportive, but always, if you ever have anything that's an emergency, don't put it off. Because suicide is another thing. If people talk about it, if they're just withdrawing and whatever. So the more that you know about mental health, the more that you know about the symptoms and the warning signs, you could be a help to someone, and you never would know how much. You would never know that you might have saved a life. So you would be the advocates for helping people get to the people that they need to get to.
I would say be kind. What do we do with people who have cancer? When we find out that they have cancer, we are very, compassionate with them and caring, and show a lot of empathy and sympathy. And so treat them the same way, be gentle with them, be kind to them, because we don't know, what they're really struggling with. But, we would never treat someone with cancer like that. And it can be that debilitating.
I would say normalizing it is a huge part of it, right? Even just talking about it or doing your own research to learn about it more, whether that's on social media or looking at articles. I would say if you haven't tried therapy, I would encourage you to try therapy. It can be for anyone and everyone. And it is a very courageous movement. It's not a sign of weakness or vulnerability. It's incredibly courageous. And think of it as something you're doing for yourself. So I would encourage that too. And I would say coming to events like these, continuing to host events like these, or even just gentle discussions with your friends or loved ones about mental health, maybe even just like soft check-ins. Like, we always are asking each other, like, hey, how are you doing? And we're like, oh, I'm fine. We're like, no, how are you doing, right? And can I give you 5 minutes of my time to check in with you? Some of the resources that we have locally are La Puerta, of course. The Heart of Texas Behavioral Health Network has a counseling center located on Lyle. They currently do have a very short waiting list, but if you're interested, they have wonderful therapists there. If you or someone that you know is experiencing a crisis, I recommend contacting 988. So there used to be a suicide prevention hotline number that was like 10 numbers long. They changed that. It's now 988. It's available in English and in Spanish. You can even text it. So I highly recommend that too.
They also have a specific one for veterans too. So if you know anyone who's a veteran, there's a specific suicide hotline for them. As Dr. Palacio said, there's also ways that you can go online and do mental health first aid. And you can have an intro course to notice the signs, to understand what to do and the steps to take. NAMI, NAMI.org is also a national organization that has a lot of resources, including groups and other places that you can go to find resources to help. So I would encourage all of us to be better and better educated and more knowledgeable about those things.
Oh, and I would add, there are a lot of places locally that are offering trainings for mental health. So for example, I provide trainings for asking about suicide and counseling on access to lethal means. The Heart of Texas Behavioral Health Network has a lot of other trainings. So if you are part of a community or a church group or just a friend group that's interested in learning more, I would say reach out and see if you can get a group of y'all to do a training together. It's a great opportunity.
And I failed my role as moderator, so I talked too much and allowed these wonderful women to go on. So I did not allow for a lot of time. So if you all could join me in saying thank you to our panelists. I highly encourage all of us to encourage others, especially to start looking into the mental health field, especially if there's men in your life trying to figure out what to do, but they want to help others. Encourage them to look into social work, encourage them to look into becoming an LPC or something, because we need more. That representation really matters, and it really does impact us whether or not we seek help and we get the help we need. So continue to learn, but also encourage others to think about that, or you yourself think about that as a change of career or a new profession, or if you're trying to figure out which way you want to go. Thank you all.
Let's give our panel another round of applause. Palacios, thank you so much, and Dr. Molina, thank you for your time, and Dr. Diaz-Espinosa, thank you for your time as well in moderating. So it is so great to see such a large crowd here today. I know everyone has probably had a busy week with either kids getting back to school or coming back from vacation. And so I know how hard and stressful it can be when you have life and then you have work and then you have everything else in between. So thank you again for your time. I do have a few announcements that I want to make. And these are going to be HLN announcements, and then I have a couple of cards from community members that would like to make announcements as well. I do want to let you know that HLN had a summer retreat in June where we were working on our 5-year strategic plan. We had about 50 leaders come to that retreat and gave us very good ideas and input on how we can strengthen and enhance our programs that we are offering now. So I want to thank those of you that were able to come out to that. Our board is now working on prioritizing that list. So stay tuned for more changes for the betterment and to give back to our community. Next, I want to let you know, if you have not heard already, Hispanic Leaders Network serving as a hub for language access in the community. We do now have our translation equipment. And so if your organization has a meeting and you want to, and you should, involve the entire community, especially the Spanish-speaking community, please do so and check out our equipment and have a translator there to share that information. To get the equipment, to check it out, just go to our website. There's a tab, resources, and there's a form that you will fill out to check out the equipment, okay? If you have any questions, feel free to call me. We also have 15 people who have now enrolled and have started our qualified community translator program. And so in about 90 to 100 days, we will have a list of those that have completed that program, and you will be able to call on them to translate at your meetings and events as well. So please keep that in mind. If you have any questions, reach out. Next thing I want to mention to you is also on the resource tab of HLN. If you are hiring and specifically looking for, and you don't have to, but if you're looking for someone to fill a position that is maybe bilingual, you now can post your sites on the HLN website under resources. So please check it out. If you have any issues or problems, please send us an email and we will have someone reach out to you. Now, mark your calendar because Hispanic Heritage Month is coming up and we are so excited to share our culture with the community. So the first event that we have coming up to kick off Hispanic Heritage Month is on September the 12th. We have Coach Baylor head football coach Dave Aranda that will be our guest speaker, and it is sponsored, thank you, yes, it is sponsored by Ascension Providence. It will be at Ascension Providence. It will be a luncheon. There are limited seats, so I will tell you that right now. So make sure you register early. When you register, we are very proud to offer events like this for free with the help of generous sponsors. But we also have a donation tab on there. And the reason why we put the donation tab is because our Navegando program is really growing. And this year we would like to offer a scholarship, a few scholarships if we can, to some of those students that are in the Navegando program. If you don't know about the students in the Navegando program, let me tell you really quickly. They are predominantly Spanish-speaking students, very limited in English. They were able to take their first trip to Baylor University. Some of them first time they've ever even stood on campus, and that tour was all in Spanish. Thanks to the Navegando committee. They're making it happen, and we want to be able to give these kids scholarships. So, as you're registering, you're going to see options of freer donation. Do what your heart feels is right there. No pressure though. Next, again, September 12th, we're doing that. Make sure you register early. Then on September the 30th at 1 o'clock, it's a Saturday, Mayborn Museum is opening up their doors to HLN again to share our culture. And we are going to have a live exhibit, which will be to close soon. We're in the finalization of doing that contract. Last year, we celebrated Mariachi Azteca, 42 years serving in the community. This year, we are going to bring you a Hispanic culture, but not Mexican. So stay tuned for the surprise and put it on your calendar to bring your entire family. Also, Mayborn is being generous to just let you come and let your kids enjoy the museum for the rest of the day. So let's give a hand to Mayborn Museum. We do have a representative here. We appreciate the fact that they are partnering with us for that. And then in October, we'll be closing out with a happy after hours at the Baylor Club, also being sponsored by the Baylor Club. There will be entertainment, there will be free beverages and free heavy hors d'oeuvres as well. So just wanted to make sure you knew about those dates. There's flyers on your table as well, but you will need to register, so keep that in mind. So we have a couple of announcements, and we have about 1 minute each. We'll probably need to make that about 30 seconds each. So first I have Anita Gomez from Waco Police Department. If you would come up real quick and make your announcement.
Thank you. Like she said, I'm Officer Anita Gomez with the Waco Police Department. The police department just recently this year in March initiated a new program within the department called Unidos. Unidos has been with the state of Texas for 23 years, but it just barely made it here to Waco. And what Unidos is us trying to unite the Latino community with the law enforcement so that we can build that trust. Of course, they don't trust us. Worked the streets for 13 and a half years out of patrol, and I had a hard time even having a victim file a report, let alone a witness of a serious crime. So we are having our next meeting on September the 20th at the South Waco Rec Center. And our speaker for that day is Judge Garcia from the Municipal Court. All of our meetings are in Spanish, completely in Spanish. We have 6 Spanish-speaking officers that are also there at the meeting at all times. And Nora Almanza, our assistant, that's also there Spanish-speaking. We are there to answer their questions, a variety of questions, whether it be from law enforcement to how to get to a certain resource before, during, and after the meetings. So hope to see you folks there. Thank you.
I'm Ada Scott from Sheriff Parnell's office. Did you need to make an announcement? Okay, you want to come on up? Yes.
Hi, I'm Ada Scott. Some of you know me that I like to do fundraising, volunteer as well. John Montez and Parnell McNamara has nominated me to do some Hispanic, bring up some Hispanic sheriffs to help out in events. If anybody has a special event going on, you cannot afford to pay for the security, something like that, we will be glad to help you out, okay? Now, I cannot promise you that they're gonna stand at the door the whole time, but they will be mingling, and I do have 3 of them here. Can you stand up? Someone did come up to us earlier and said, "I've never seen a sheriff smile." And I just want to tell you guys, you know, they're humans too. You know, they have personality. Just because they're in uniform, just like police officers, you know, they have, personalities. They're humans. We smile. And we also like to mingle, especially me. So I'm teaching them how to do that. So please give me a call. If you don't have my number and you want to get my number, please come up to me, contact me or John Montez. We'd like to get more involved in the Hispanic community. Parnell McNamara has put me in charge of doing this. So please get in contact with me. Okay? Thank you. Oh, and I will provide donations if needed.
Great, thank you all for doing that. That's really, really nice. Okay, so this concludes our HLN Conectar-Connect. Thank you again to La Puerta. Let's give them a round of applause. And we hope you all have a great Thursday weekend, and we will see you all on September the 12th. Take care and have a good one.